got it? Hello. There we go. Well, good evening, and thank you guys for coming out for our jail district meeting. This is the last of a series of 6 that we've been around the county talking to folks, and I'll just share it with you. It hasn't been really well attended, which is disappointing to all of us that are trying to get the facts out there and set aside the opinions and the sensation and the rumors, ill of that, and getting actually the real what's going on with this jail. So let me introduce the team that's with it today. Did everybody hear me? Is this thing that's working good? I just want to make sure you can hear me. So let's do your introduction. Judge, you want to start first?
Hi, Jim Carlock. I'm retired. I did serve as a Superior Court judge for a number of years here in the county, but I'm retired. So I commend you for coming out, and I commend you for coming out to get information on this issue. And if I wasn't sitting up here, I'd probably be sitting there with you as a private citizen.
Rich Carlock, County Administrator, and I'll be doing the presentation portion of about the mail ballot election and also the financial component.
Good evening, I'm Ken Bradshaw. I'm the jail commander. I was a retired deputy from the state in 24 years with the Department of Corrections, and I've been commander for the Sheriff's Office for 12 years.
Good evening all, I'm Megan Kennedy. I'm the Division Director of Detention Health Services at the Cochise County Jail, and I'm working on my 18th year.
Stand up.
Good evening, Lieutenant Ariel Morke. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for going on 23 years now, and I'm in charge of the daily operation of the jail.
Hi, my name is Rich Morales. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 28 years, and I'm assigned to the jail right now.
Hi, Christy Heiser. I'm also Detention Lieutenant for Administration. I've been there 20 years.
I had the staff, which were really the backbone behind the jail, introduce themselves because they said, Sheriff, we don't get a chance to speak, so please let us introduce ourselves. So thank you guys for doing that. So again, my name is Mark Allen. I'm your Cochise County Sheriff, and this is my 11th year as Sheriff, 39th year in law enforcement. And ironically, when I first started, I started with the Bisbee Police Department in 1984, and we used to book our inmates into the old courthouse in downtown Bisbee. And we were, if you're ever at the courthouse, especially folks having it around, if you look up at the 3rd floor, you'll see the cell with the windows with the cell bars in them. You ride an elevator up to the 3rd floor to drop off the inmates, and that was usually interesting to get a drunk or combative individual. The sheriff's office in Bisbee used to be on the bottom of the courthouse years ago. So I had the opportunity to watch them open the current jail. And I tell you, it was such an exciting time. But also I'll tell you this, and I can speak a little more freely as being elected. It's an exciting time to watch us close it too. It really is, and that's really what's going to happen. After tonight's presentation, I think you're going to walk away and say, wow, over the last 11 years, whether I'm the sheriff or anybody that's standing up here as sheriff will be telling you the same thing. We brought in experts, both from NIJO, which is National Institute of Jail Operations, to include instructional experts that build jails. In fact, the company that built DLR, that built Santa Cruz and Grand County jails, came to us over the last couple of years and did a study for us. Actually came in, walked through, looked at everything, looked at modern day standards, and then came back to the commander and I and Rich Gawaska and a community group that you're going to hear the judge speak about in a minute, and say it's time. It's time. And it's ironically, talked to my friend here from K&G, they were part of building it back in 1985 when the jail was actually built. And he might have some comments later about that. So, folks, the recommendation from these companies is it's time to move away from that facility. And you're going to hear more about that. One of the unique parts of being a sheriff under the public safety is the fact that the Arizona Constitution requires me to and mandates me to run a jail. And when you look at liabilities for a sheriff, what do you think? Well, it's the guys who go out and make arrests, or the guys who go out and carry guns. Actually, it's just the opposite. It's what happens in that facility. And you look at what happened 40 years ago with our population society, where it is 4 decades later, and you wonder why we have a challenge, let alone excluding just the infrastructure challenges that's there. So that's why we're here. And I'm saying this to you too, it's about the men and women that work in that jail and their safety. We had the opportunity, the county did 6 months ago, and that was to do a survey to the public here in Cochise County about what is the priorities of this jail? What's the public's opinion about this jail? And the 3 top priorities was officer and inmate safety. And I'll just say this to you. I think most of you know me well, will understand I'm tough on the rule of law. If you break the rule, if you break into the mayor's house here, and well, Mayor, thank you for coming out tonight. Peggy, thank you for coming. Peggy Judge from the board, thank you for being here too. If you break in those homes and we catch you, you need to be in jail. That's the rule of law. And I've been very strong on that, whether it's border, whether it's community crimes, whatever it is, and having a proper facility. But with that comes challenges, especially a jail is 40 years old. So officer and inmate safety was number 1. Number 2 was medical and mental health. Look at mental health 40 years ago and look at it today. It's quite different. The stigma has been lowered, and it's more recognizable in today's society, current society. And last but not least is, that's why I stand in front of you today, is the quality of life that you guys enjoy in Cochise County. It's a great place to be a sheriff. It's a great place to wear a badge and be a cop and be a serve as an elected official for you all. And I mean that. But that quality of life comes with certain resources. And one of them, the primary one for criminal justice system, is the jail. If I don't have a jail, and I ask the question, what does the quality of life mean to the people that gave the survey? What that means is if we don't have a facility, you'll hear more from the commander, that can hold criminals that are community risk driven, your sex offenders, your murderers, your rapists, your burglars, your thieves, they go on the streets, folks. You see that throughout communities throughout the country. That's an asset that we need, that public safety needs, and the criminal justice system needs. So today is not to tell you how to vote. Now I might encourage you, but my job is not to tell you how to vote, but to give you the facts when you walk away from it, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have for us today. At the end of this, we're going to do a question and answer. I'll come back up and we'll go a Q&A and talk about that, which is very important. In Arizona, as you know, there's 15 counties. 9 out of 15 counties have jail districts. Coconino just renewed theirs for another 25 years. So you'll hear more about the financial piece, but really what it boils down to is you sit in those chairs. Don't listen to what's going on social media, because a lot of that is driven for personal agendas. What you're here for is quality of life, and last is what the cost is, which the county administrator is going to go over that in a minute. So I thank you. I'll come back up here in just a few minutes. I'm going to talk at the end about what are our efforts. What have we done in the sheriff's office to make this lessen the burden on you? So with that said, I'm going to turn over to Kenny Bradshaw, our jail commander. He served 13 years with the sheriff's office too. I think he's the longest serving jail commander. Sheriff Beaver hired him, and then he transitioned with me when I got elected 11 years ago. So Kenny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening. So we have 3 jails in Cochise County. We have a main jail in Bisbee, we have a jail in Sierra Vista, and we have a jail in Wilcox. In Sierra Vista, we have 19 beds, and in Wilcox, we have 16 beds. Those 2 satellite jails are for the convenience of law enforcement. Because if somebody gets arrested in San Simon, it would be a 2-hour drive to Bisbee to lock somebody up, and then a 2-hour drive back, and we don't want to take officers off the street for that long. Sierra Vista being the population center of the county is why we have a substation there. We've also considered if the population grows here in Benson, with the village at Viñedos, all the rest of the planning that we've done, then we would have to put a satellite here too for the convenience of law enforcement and for that added population. So that brings us to the main jail in Bisbee. So if you're booked into one of those satellite offices and you're booked into any jail, you have to see a judge within 24 hours. After that, if the judge decides to keep you and you're in one of the satellite jails, more than likely you're going to be transported to Bisbee. Bisbee currently has 302 beds. It was originally designed and built in 1985 for 168 inmates. In the late 90s, we went in and double bumped it for 302. So at a max beds of 302, last September, you need to know that Arizona passed a law that local law enforcement can now enforce human trafficking, human smuggling, if they could prove certain things happened. So our county attorney and our sheriff decided that they were going to be the ones that enforce that in the state. They're one of the very few counties, I think there's only 2 counties in the state that are enforcing that law to see what happens. So because of that, and all the high-speed chases that you guys have seen, and all the failure to yields and everything else, we have a lot more border crimes. For example, last year in 2022, we booked in 1,578 people into jail for border-related issues. Of that 1,578, only 78 were foreign-born. 1,500 of them were U.S. citizens that came into our county and decided that they needed to try and pick up and smuggle people north and try and make a quick dime. So our population, remember I said our max population is 302 on max beds, not max population. So in October, November, December, we were running about 340, 345. That means that people are on the floor. So if anybody that knows how a jail works, I'm going to explain a little bit. So at about 260 of our population, we start to lose the advantage of classification. So classification means that if you commit a crime and you come to jail, you're classified depending on your previous crimes, your propensity for violence, a lot of factors. So you get classified as minimum, medium, maximum, protected custody, female, or juvenile. Now juvenile is a whole different issue. So in Cochise County, you can charge somebody in the state of Arizona, you can charge juveniles as adults. So back 5 or 6 years ago, we had a lot of smuggling, and the cartels were using juveniles to bring drugs into Cochise County and across the line. When that happened, the sheriff and the county attorney got together and they said, look, the feds have no process to prosecute juveniles. There has to be some kind of consequence for this. So they decided we would start charging them as adults with local charges, with the drug smuggling. So at one point, we had 36 juveniles in the adult facility that were charged as adults. Whenever we even have one, there's still the juvenile mandate. So we have to provide the total school lunch program. We have to provide 1 hour of large muscle mass activity every single day. We have to provide them mandatory education. And the biggest one is they have to be sight and sound separated from any adult inmate. Sight and sound separated. So every time we had to move a juvenile to go to education, to go to recreation, to go to visitation, to go see their lawyer, to go to medical, to go to court, we have to lock down the entire jail just to move them because it's a requirement that we're audited on and people do spot checks, sight and sound separated from every adult inmate. In 1985, when that jail was designed and built, that wasn't an issue. So that brings me to our population. Our population has changed totally in 40 years. It's a different kind of people that are coming in now. When I first came to the county 13 years ago, we were running an average about 20 or 22 female inmates out of that entire population. Now it runs anywhere from 45 to 85. We used to only have one living area, one pod is what we call it, one pod for females. So as our population started to rise of females, we realized that the females weren't afforded the same privilege of classification that all the male inmates were. So if a female got a DUI and had to do 24 hours, there's a good possibility they were going to be in the same living area as a female that was charged for homicide. That's not a good situation. So we had to develop more living areas for female inmates. Now the biggest change in our population, and I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, is the mental health situation in Cochise County. And I want to save that for last because that's what I want you guys to stick in your brain. But I want to talk about the state of a building that people have lived in for 40 years who don't care about the building. They don't care that it looks nice. Most inmates for entertainment like to flush things. So everything from styrofoam, bed sheets, blankets, uniforms, oranges, Oreos, everything goes down the toilet. It's entertainment. We have inmates that will get a roll of toilet paper, put one end in, and put their finger in it, and just keep flushing and watch the whole thing go down. So then they get placed on just a ration. But I mean, there are certain consequences for their actions, but until they do those actions, there's no consequence. So let's talk about the facility a little bit. So the picture you see on your left-hand side, if you look real close at the ground, near the perimeter of that perimeter fence, you're going to see a cable. Last summer, we ran the entire facility off of basically a very long extension cord because we had no power for about 5 weeks. So Power went out at the jail. Couldn't figure out what was wrong. Couldn't figure out what was wrong. Called our facilities. Couldn't figure out what was wrong. Called APS in. APS said there's been some kind of massive failure. It's going to take us a while to figure it out. Arizona Public Service came in, plugged this big cable into our main input, ran it almost a quarter of a mile down to an electric substation on Highway 80 down by the jail, and finally got us power. For 5 weeks, everybody that came to the sheriff's office had to drive over this cable that went across the road in order to get to work. So that brings me to the middle picture. In 1985, when this building was built, we didn't have IP phones. We didn't have Cat5 cable. We didn't have computers. We didn't have IP cameras. We didn't have all the security that we try and put into some kind of modern facility. So we had to aftermarket it, if you will, to what we could actually use and put in there. So what you see in the middle picture is the main hallway in the jail. It has Cat5, it has conduit, it has everything running down the outsides of the wall. That tends to lead to tampering, damage, and it's just not good for a detention facility. So in Sierra Vista the other night, I was actually saying, it looks like the inside of a submarine, and I've compared it to that for a long time. Well, there was a guy that stood up at questions and answers, and he said, you know, I worked on a submarine for 20 years, and I was like, well, where's this going? And he said, that's worse than a submarine. So it turned out okay. The last picture you see on the right, when they constructed the jail, for some reason, whoever designed it, not built it, whoever designed it, put the boiler room and the main electrical room right next to each other. I don't know how that combination works, but it doesn't work for us. So Bisbee's water is notoriously hard, and the plumbing and sewage in a detention facility is so abused before we have that hard water. So we always have leaks and drips and everything else in there. So that boiler room, we've had to replace the water heaters and water softeners, because we have water softeners to try and save the pipes and save the water heaters from that. But you have to replace them every now and then. So what you see is where the main electrical runs out of the electrical room to all the living areas. And the water has leaked from the boiler room into the conduit where all the electrical runs to all the living areas. So we think that had something to do, not sure, with that issue. So that's what we're looking at as far as just some of the problems. Now we have big security issues too, as far as, you know, the officer stations. We don't have proper control rooms. The officers, when they built it, they didn't think about where the officers were going to be. They thought about where the inmates were going to be. So the officer stations are basically a desk thrown in the hallway. And I would invite anybody, a civic group, government organization, whatever you want. If you can come talk to me afterwards, I'll give you my card. Please come and tour and take a look and see what it looks like. Just for yourself. And that way you can be educated and you can determine whether you think we need a new facility or not. So let's get back to mental health. So Sheriff Daniels, working on the road, he's called to Circle K for the third time on his shift because there's some guy out front cussing everybody out that's coming and going and yelling and screaming and acting a fool. Everybody's seen somebody outside of a Circle K doing that. Well, the third time he goes there, he realizes I'm wasting a lot of time with this guy. The problem with rural Arizona and Cochise County specifically is we don't have a dedicated mental health facility to take them to. Because that should be, and what happens in a lot of other counties and a lot of areas in the country is that person is taken at that point to a mental health hospital where they can get some help. Most places call them crisis centers. So there's two sides to a crisis center. I like to call them beds and chairs. So the chair side, maybe this guy that was in front of Circle K just needs a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, watch a couple of hours of Gilligan's Island, and he's going to go out and be a great member of society again. But maybe he needs to be on that bedside for 72 hours. And on that bedside, he can get back on some kind of medication regimen, he can get diagnosed with maybe what his problem is, and then he can go out, and he never gets involved in the criminal justice system. Sheriff Daniels, with that guy in front of Circle K, doesn't have that option because we don't have those in Cochise County. The closest ones are in Tucson and Phoenix, and we end up running a lot of people to Tucson and Phoenix. So anyway, he charges them with trespassing, disturbing the peace, whatever the case may be, and brings them to jail. We try and do the best we can with them. But there's quite a few people in our community that are so ill that I can't put them in general population because they'll be preyed upon by the general population, or they're so ill and out of control that they might injure the population. So they have to be isolated. Where you or I isolated for any amount of time might start to lose it a little bit, these folks are already there, so we're not doing them any good whatsoever. So now Mr. Circle K is charged with a crime, he's isolated in jail, he sees a judge, he might get released in 24 hours. Well, now he's got charged, and he's got a court date, so he doesn't show up for a court date. So they issue a warrant. Then he goes, finally somebody gets him and takes him to court. Well, now he's got a fine. He doesn't pay a fine. And it keeps spiraling and spiraling until this poor guy ends up in prison when we could have took care of it at the beginning with some kind of mental health facility. What we're planning, and Megan will talk to you a little more about it, is to include those mental health treatment areas in our new facility, because the sheriff and I for years have been going around trying to get all kinds of organizations to help us out with the crisis center, and it won't happen. So if we can get a modern facilities have those areas for mental health treatment and deferral programs to where if it's not a horrendous crime and there's no victims, they can get some mental health help and they can get released and they don't get into that criminal justice spiral where they end up just going out of control. So with that, I'll give it to Megan Kennedy, and she can tell you about our medical and mental health programs. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your attendance. I appreciate you guys coming out to become informed. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the challenges facing the medical department. So our first challenge that we have is staffing challenges, and I think that across the state, everybody's having across the nation, everybody's having some staffing challenges right now. Our particular challenge is that we don't have 24/7 on-site medical staff. So there's a gap in time in the evening and overnight where there's not a medical staff on or within the facility, and that ends up causing us to an increase in individuals that we're sending out to the emergency room or they're being transported for mental illness. So providing help for the mentally ill, nearly 2/3 of inmates have received mental health services at some point in their lifetime. And while we've been able to increase our mental health services at the Cochise County Jail, we've been able to increase our services provided as far as the number of inmates that are seen by the psych provider and the number of medications that we're able to provide to them, and also with some community reentry trying events. We're still lacking the proper housing to house these individuals. So whenever they do come into our facility, like Commander Bradshaw mentioned, a lot of the times their illness is exacerbated by the location that they're housed in. So as far as the mental health trends within our community, or within our Cochise County Jail, our average daily population has increased by almost 100 since 2021. This graph up here, I've been told is a little confusing and a little blurry, but I'm going to kind of explain it to you a little bit more. The public health social worker that we have at our jail has been able to increase multiple services provided to the inmates, and this graph depicts that. So she provides linkages to care for individuals who are released back into the community. And those linkages to care can be created in multiple different ways. A lot of the times she's setting up these individuals for success for when they are released from our facility. So we have an individual who comes in that has a mental illness and they are taking psychiatric medications, mental health medications, and they have skipped multiple appointments and they've ended up in jail. Once we get them leveled back out on their medications within the facility and they do have a discharge date, our public health social worker starts working with them almost immediately whenever they come into the facility to set them up for a good discharge plan, a good community reentry plan. She can set them up with appointments for whenever they are released, making sure that they're getting set up for medication continuation for whenever they are released, or also setting them up with treatment programs. They have a substance use problem. We can get them set up with treatment programs, rehab facilities, and we also have been able to secure a transportation grant that has allowed for these individuals to be transported directly from the jail, from when they walk out of the facility and they're released, to treatment facilities, whether that be in Sierra Vista or Tucson or Phoenix. And then once those individuals are transported there, then that's half the battle, and they get there and they can hopefully get the help that they need, decreasing our recidivism. About 10% of the population that the public health social worker is seeing is diagnosed as seriously mentally ill. And she is completing an average of 100 patient visits per month and an average of 20 linkages to care per month. She also recently implemented a new program in our jail with the Book Exchange program. And in January of 2023, she was able to exchange 856 books. It's been a really big deal, and it's been a big help. So next I'm gonna go over some more mental health trends in our facility. And this graph is going to depict the mental health services, those provider visits I was talking about that have been increasing. And with the increase in the mental health provider visits, we've also seen an increase in the medications, of course. But in July of 2021, our mental health providers saw 19 individuals. And in November of 22, that increased to 39 individuals. And so for 2023, the mental health provider is seeing an average of 35 patients per month. So addressing ongoing medical and drug addiction needs. A lot of the times, mental health issues goes hand in hand with substance abuse issues. And I have a graph that will depict that in just a few minutes. The inmates that are requiring long-term hospitalization for mental health issues, they can't be housed at the jail because we don't have the proper facility. Having a modern facility and having a jail district which would allow for 24/7 nursing care would allow the less dollars to be spent in these outside hospitalizations. The other thing is on the medical side, something as small as IV antibiotics being ordered. We can't manage that in our jail because I don't have 24/7 nursing care. So if somebody requires IV antibiotics, I have nurses that are very competent, very good at what they do, and they could absolutely provide that IV medication. But we can't house them there because we don't have a nurse there 24/7. So with mental illness going hand in hand with substance abuse a lot of the times, nope, this isn't that graph. We'll get to that one on the next one. This is going to be our providers' visits. So we have a provider on site 2 to 3 days a week that is able to see individuals within the clinic. And in 2020, we saw 194 inmates. From January 1st through August 31st of 2022, there was 226 inmates seen. Just January 1st of this year through March 27th, our provider had already seen 101 patients. The access to care within our facility is great. There's a provider on site 2 to 3 days a week that's able to see these individuals. It's able to set them up for success whenever they're released back into the community. And a lot of the times I hear like, how does this affect me? Well, whenever I feel that it affects everybody within our community, because the best place to start public health is within a jail. And more than 50% of those individuals are released back into our community. So if we can get to them before they're released back into the community and get them with a good treatment plan and set them up for success, hopefully that will also decrease the threat to the public as far as health concerns goes, and it will also decrease the recidivism. This is the graph regarding the substance abuse. So we do 2 separate clinical scales in order to monitor withdrawal. One of the scales is a clinical intoxication withdrawal scale, which will be abbreviated as a CIWA, and that monitors for alcohol withdrawals, methamphetamine withdrawals. We also have a clinical opiate withdrawal scale, which monitors for the opiate withdrawals. We conduct those twice a day. And in 2020, we conducted 139 SIWAs and 302 cows. 2021, that jumped to 658 SIWAs and 1,629 cows assessments. In January, just January, the month of January in 2023, we had already conducted 26 SIWAs and 352 cows assessments. There's an obvious increase in withdrawals, and sure fentanyl has a lot to do with that. The fentanyl withdrawals that I've seen have been the worst withdrawals that I've seen in my almost 18 years. And it's definitely on the rise, and it could be due to the fact that we are a border county, but it's definitely been a hindrance. So our facility challenges, this is our medical clinic. Whenever the jail was built almost 40 years ago, medical was an afterthought. We didn't have a medical clinic. So the clinic and my offices and our hallway that we call the med room were the locker rooms before, and they've been converted into a clinic. And we have a lack of space, obviously, so that definitely becomes an issue. Storage space becomes an issue, and we're having to store stuff under desks and wherever we can find any open space. And there's also limited privacy. The safety of staff becomes into play whenever you think about this. Whenever you have such a small area, it becomes a concern, not just for my staff, but for, not just for the nurses, but for the detention officers as well. These two pictures, I was told by one of our retired detention officers that attended one of the town hall meetings, he said that picture does not do it justice, because it is so much smaller than that.
Absolutely not. That chair there is that chair there. So the end of that is that chair, patient chair. Gives you more of an idea of the size.
It is
very small.
It's very tiny. So I went back and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna piece it out just to see. This space is about 12 foot by 14 foot. Most people's bedrooms are larger than that. So not having an infirmary definitely hinders the care that we can provide. Like I said, we have very capable, very competent nurses, very compassionate nurses, and a compassionate, capable provider that could provide excellent care, and they do provide excellent care. But the care that they are providing is hindered due to the fact that we don't have an infirmary and we don't have 24/7 medical staff on site. We also don't have a negative pressure room, which would be used for anybody being housed under droplet precautions, something like tuberculosis. And being a border county, tuberculosis can be more prevalent, can be seen more in those communities than in others. And if we were to have somebody with active tuberculosis, that individual couldn't be housed at our jail for the safety of everybody. They'd have to be housed at a local facility, and an officer would have to be at a local hospital that has a negative pressure room, and then an officer would have to be with them 24/7. Building a modern jail would allow all of my very competent and compassionate nurses and medical staff to properly care for these individuals. And now I'm going to hand it off to retired Judge Carlock.
Thank you, and again, thank you for coming out. And my name is Jim Carlock. I am retired. I don't speak for or on behalf of the court. I'm not an employee of the county. I don't speak for or on behalf of the county. I'll tell you why I'm here in just a minute. But I'm glad that this slide is still up there. That's the hospital for the people that come into the jail, people that are injured, people that are sick, and people that are withdrawing from drugs and alcohol. That's where they go. We're expecting Miss Kennedy to care for them and the other nurses that are there. We'll talk more about the jail, but these officers, we expect them to do the things that they need to do in a facility that it's just unacceptable. And saw Sergeant Paul will come in, same for you. We need to recognize the effort that these folks are putting into this, and I want to thank you right now for what you've done. And I don't know how you've done it, but I just, again, thank you for doing that. All right, so I'll move on to what I was supposed to do. I need to also commend the Board of Supervisors. This has been a very open process. It has included the public all along the way. The sheriff, county administrator developed a lot of information, and it's all available to you. And then the board of supervisors decided to have public members, public participation in the process. It's very open, visible process for everybody. So this public outreach committee was formed, and we looked at the information that had been gathered. And this is our committee. I agreed to be the chairperson. Daniel Acosta, Frank Antonori, David DePeso, Kay Gojkovic, Tony Isom, John Kosmeyer, Paul Sheets, Jennifer Lacasille, Katie Miller, Eric Peterman, and John. And I want to thank each of them for their participation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask Ms. Miller. We met a number of times, August through October, and all of those, by the way, are still available online. If you want to look at what we did, the process, all of that's available. You can navigate to the county website and see all the information that we had. We're given a lot of information, criminal justice system. We looked at crime and immigration challenges, all of those things. Talk about a little bit about the financial situation and how that would play out. And at the end, unanimously, the group voted that and agreed that we need a new jail. I mean, that was an easy question. We toured the jail. We have this information. That's pretty clear. We need a new jail. And it was also a unanimous decision that the county should create a jail district. And that's why we're out here now, to talk to you about that. But let me just say some things, folks. Just suppose, but go with me here a little bit. Say you bought a car a long time ago, right? And you've done a really good job of keeping that thing going. But it's out of date, and it doesn't really fit your needs. I guess your CD player is broken, your cassette player, whatever it was. But you don't want that monthly payment, okay? So you keep on driving. You keep on going somehow. Now your mechanic is telling you, this is going to cost you a lot of money. I can't tell you when, but it's going to cost you a lot. But you're thinking, I really don't want that monthly payment. I'm going to have to pay a whole bunch of money, don't know when, but cross that road when I come to it. Okay? So now your steering wheel's getting a little hinky, and your brakes are getting a little mushy, right? You know, if you think about it, somebody is going to get hurt or killed if you keep driving that car. Still, you're not so sure about your monthly payment now. You're going to try for a little while longer. Okay, now your car is starting to burn oil. It's smoking like crazy. The exhaust system's going out and it's loud. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody sees you coming. And what starts to happen now is you start getting citations. You start getting pulled over. And you start going down to see the judge on a regular basis. And maybe that judge can't make you get a new car, but life can get very expensive and very uncomfortable for you if you keep that particular vehicle. So one last step here. So now you decide, well, let me go down to the dealership and see what kind of deal I can get on that car. So the dealer tells you, you know what, you've had to endure that car for a long time. We're going to give you 25% off the sticker price. Just look at the car, pick a car you like, 25% off, and we'll make a deal with you. Okay? So let's talk about your jail now. It's outdated. It doesn't function. There are things there that just don't work, and no offense, that never work. It's not. There's some design flaws in that jail that simply are unacceptable. It's going to cost a lot of money to keep that going. And you don't know when it's going to come, but it's going to come. And it's going to cost a lot of money for you. And it's not safe that facility is not safe. Somebody is going to get seriously injured or killed if we do not move forward with this process. And I don't know how else to tell you that. You know what? There's a lot of smoke coming out of this thing, and it's getting loud. And it's not going to be too long before your sheriff and your county administrator are going to get to know a federal judge really well, and have many meetings and many hearings, and become very expensive and very uncomfortable for you. You can't tell me that, yes, we need a new jail, but I don't want to pay for it. That doesn't work. Take you back to your car, your old clunker car. If you decide you want to get another car, you go down to the dealership and you tell the dealer, I'm done with this thing. I want a new car, but I don't want to pay for it. It's not going to work. You're not going to get another car out of that. This has to be paid for. It's time for us to stand up, meet this head on, approve that 1/2-cent sales tax, and go forward in an orderly and reasonable manner. And I'll turn this over to our county administrator for a question.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Let me just get familiarized with this clicker. So, let me start off with first kind of explaining the jail district. So the board established the jail district. That's one part. The second part of it is the funding of the jail district. And that's what the election is for. There's two ways to fund a jail district. One is through property tax, the other is through sales tax. Now, if that measure fails, the whole thing fails. So then you have to start the process all over again, and the Board of Supervisors would have to establish a jail district again. We've been having these public meetings, and I appreciate everyone coming out. But I wanted this room packed. I wanted all those tables down. I wanted everyone here to fully understand, because that's the point of this. So, the job of all you here is to explain to people there is a website for the county. These meetings have been recorded. That information is out there. They could also, as the retired Judge Carlock mentioned, the prior meetings are recorded. All that information is there. So please push that out. Let people know so that they can understand before they make a decision on the ballot. Now let's talk about the ballot itself. And it's an all-mail election that will happen on May 16th. However, first and foremost, if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote. You have until April 17th to do that. We have forms here. If you're all registered to vote, but you know someone that's not, please pass on that information. So if they're registered to vote by April 17th, they will get a mail ballot. The mail ballot is one question. We're still at the Dropbox. So before I explain the question, you'll get a ballot, yes or no. It's a 1/2-cent sales tax. They're a little out of work, so I'll come back to that. It's a 1/2-cent sales tax for 25 years. So it's yes or no. There's no in between. So if you believe there should be a 1/2-cent sales tax for 25 years, you mark yes. If you don't believe there should be a 1/2-cent sales tax for 25 years, mark no. The story that I mentioned before is when me and my wife try to go out for dinner. And we go to a restaurant. And she's like, I'm in the mood for hamburgers. Okay, so we go there. And she goes, but I don't like the french fries. All right, so we go to another place. And does this look good? Maybe. There is no in between, okay? I just want a yes or no from my wife to say, let's go here so we can sit down and have a meal. Same thing with the ballot. It's yes or no. You can't mark it. You can't say, yes, I like the half-cent sales tax, but I want it for 5 years. You can't do that. It's all or nothing. Now, you're going to get the ballot mailed to you. So I'm going to go back to this slide. You can fill it out, circle yes, circle no, put it back in its envelope, mail it back. That is one choice. You can also fill it out, put it in an envelope, and drop it off at a drop box. So April 19th is when they're going to be mailed out. From April 19th to May 15th, the day before the election, there's going to be drop boxes. These are all the locations. Benson, right down the road at the County Service Center, you can go in, but look at the dates. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you come on the weekends or you come before or after those times, you won't be able to drop off the ballot. So please, if people want to come in and drop off the ballot, here's the locations, you know where yours is. Now let's fast forward to May 16th. Just like in school, your dog ate your ballot, okay? You tore it up, you misplaced it, something happened. Well, that doesn't mean you can't come in and vote. There is a replacement ballot location. There's one, it's a little further, it's in Wilcox. You can go to the Wilcox Service Center. Give them your information, they'll give you another ballot to mark yes or no, and you can fill it out and turn it in that same day. Okay? So those are all your choices of what you can do to place the vote. So this is a temporary tax. Now people say, 25 years, I see someone like, 25 years, that's not temporary. It is. If you think of most of your mortgages, even though they say it's for 30 years, it's still a temporary mortgage. You don't pay a mortgage for the rest of your life. After that 25 years, if they wanted to extend that, once again, they have to go back out to the voters and ask the question of whether to extend that half-cent sales tax or whatever that sales tax is. Sales tax versus property tax. I want to get into some of the questions that we've been hearing about. Why not property tax? Well, first, let's explain the sales tax part. We did a very, very easy calculation, and it's a very rough calculation of what the sales tax would cost an individual in the county. If you look, it's $8.5 million. We believe the half-cent sales tax would generate $8.5 million. We divided that by what they say the population is in our county, which is 126,463, which equals $67.21 per year. Right? It's laughable. We did the easiest possible calculation, but it doesn't encompass everyone, right? All the people that are coming in, if that population number is correct, which most people don't believe it is, I don't believe it is. So that number will probably be lower. So compared to now, let's go property tax. If we wanted to get that same amount of revenue, $8.5 million, I'm going to switch to the next slide, but I don't want to be there too long, okay? Because some of you look angry at me already. So the next slide, property tax. We would have to increase property tax by 31% to get the same amount of revenue. So for every $100,000 home, that's $83. Okay? Like I said, I don't want to stick here too long, but when you decide, when people are like, what are we doing? Property tax, sales tax, are there any other choices? There is not. By statute, it has to be one or the other. And when you do the numbers, it makes sense to do the half-cent sales tax than to put all the burden on the property owners. So, here's the sales tax of what I don't want to skirt by this, okay? Because it is a tough issue, no matter what. For the city of Benson, as you can see, the state sales tax is 5.6. The county currently has a half-cent sales tax. The city, 3.5. The total is 9.6. If we add the jail half-cent sales tax, it would push you over 10. That's not lost on me, that's not lost on most people. It is a very difficult decision, but it's one that has to be made. Okay, that's why I'm giving you all the information. I don't want to skirt by this. However, we're going to leave it on this for a second. But one of the other questions we talk about, and people have heard, is, oh, you want the jail tax, you want the jail district, because then the county gets off scot-free. All the money that you paid before, you don't have to pay. That's why you want it. Well, that's not true. Okay? The Auditor General, we get audited every year. The Auditor General determines what they call the maintenance of effort. What we contribute year after year to the jail, which is roughly $5.4 million. We still have to contribute to that. We still have to pay that. We still have to pay our share. And that also goes up with inflation. The Auditor General, no one in the county here determines what that dollar amount. That third party Auditor General determines. The other question is, oh, I see, county, you want all that money so that you can take it and do with it whatever you want, right? You're going to give that county administrator a brand new Ferrari, right? That's not going to happen. And the reason why is the Auditor General, the same people that tell us our maintenance of effort, also audit us to determine how money is coming in and how money is coming out, and this money specifically has to be used for the jail. Now, the way it breaks down, that $8.5 million additional to our maintenance of effort, $4 million would go towards paying off the bond for building a new jail. But that's not it. So they're like, well, what happens to the rest of the money? You've heard from Commander Bradshaw. We are extremely understaffed at the jail. That $2 million will get us there to what we're supposed to be staffed. You've heard from Megan Kennedy, our nurse. She's fantastic, but guess what? She works in a small room and she's not staffed at all, and we're not 24/7 medical, right? That additional $2 million will get us fully staffed. And hopefully, we won't shortchange it this time. It won't be a shower. We'll build out the medical facility, and that's how much it would cost. So it's not strictly for a new building, because if it was, we'd need a lot less. But you don't want to build a building and then not staff it, because what's the point? The other thing that we've heard about is, man, that's a lot of money. Why don't you just bust all the inmates somewhere else? Well, that sounds very simple, and it sounds great. But when we did the rough calculations, that's $9 million. $9 million a year on top of what we pay now. So what does that solve? It solves nothing. It creates more problems. When you talk about transporting inmates, the security is a nightmare, okay? And also you're busing people back and forth twice, probably a day, because court's still here. Court is not in another county. I'm trying to look at one last thing. I'm going to actually a couple last things. But one of them was, well, how can we vote for something where we don't know the location and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, how many inmates it's going to house, and the specific details? Well, I like my job as county administrator. And I have to be really responsible with taxpayer dollars. Those feasibility studies cost a lot of money. And if I did those studies right now, which would roughly cost about $1.5 million, it'd be great, it'd be pretty. I'd have this stack of papers. I tell my board of supervisors, this is fantastic. I give it out to the public, everyone would be happy. And then the jail district does not pass. If it does not pass, then maybe 2-3 years down the way, we'll try it again. And that stack of papers that I paid all that money for is worthless. And then my bosses, one who's here, would say, thank you, but you just lost a lot of money for the taxpayers for making the wrong decision. And I wouldn't blame them. I would leave. And I think One last thing to cover, the sheriff has done an excellent job. To get the legislature to commit $20 million to build a jail is fantastic. However, there's a catch to it. We have to get the funding secured for that $20 million to come. The way to do that is for the jail district to pass. We have until 2027, but if it doesn't, and we're not secure that funding, that money is gone. So I think that concludes most of my presentation. I appreciate you guys once again coming out. I'm now going to pass the microphone on to the sheriff again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich, and thank you to our panel here. It really boils down to this, and that is, again, the quality of life and the cost. And you look at, we've already explained the need for a new jail. You look at $67, which I think is a high number, as the county administrator spoke about. That didn't include the guests and the tourists coming to our community that spend money that will reduce that cost. That's a dinner at Chili's, if you look at it in that aspect. But again, it's reasonable and sufficient. What wasn't mentioned is if it doesn't pass. And this is where I agree with the county administrator that I wish this group was packed. I wish it was packed around the county when we went around. We had one meeting where nobody showed up. Nobody showed up except for a reporter, so you get the whole story. But it's sad because we want people to be very interested in this for all the right reasons, as you've heard tonight on that. But if it doesn't pass, we did a study a couple of years ago where the commander and I went around and talked to the sheriffs about if we had to shut the judge out, as retired judge stated here, or if a federal judge did put a mandate on us. Folks, we're not far off. Not far off. That happens. That's a forced mandate that's going to cost us. We have to start busting out of the county to include increased liability, $9 million a year. And you talk about what we're talking about tonight is pretty efficient. That's what it would cost. Because we looked at some avenues working with this judge and the board about what can we do that might offset this right now. It was just too costly. It was really too costly. Talking to my fellow sheriffs that have jail districts, it works very, very well for all the right reasons. So, as you've heard tonight on that, you've heard about the location, as our county minister say. I just added another flavor on that one. Is I know the mayor of Bisbee has welcomed that jail for many years. His predecessors, and I know they still want it down there. That is the county seat, and one of the things I'll just say that on it is that's also where our courts are at, our superior courts. So that's probably a very reasonable spot to probably go back to. I want to share with you, we've worked hard. One of the hardest things to do is bring money for a jail. Nobody wants to build jails. Everybody neglects them. Nobody wants to talk about them. It's clean industry, but it's vital to community safety and public safety. When Commander Bradshaw and I hit the road, we went up to the Capitol last year, thanks to Gail Griffin, and said, hey, we need help. And we took some beatings when we testified several times last year, but we stopped them, and we finally got $20 million. We tried to go after 40, but we were lucky to get 20. But $20 million, as the judge said, is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. We also have $2.2 million that Senator Kelly and Senator Sinema have allocated to us. That's still in the process. So it's $22.2 million. I had a lunch with Senator Kelly on Monday, and we had a roundtable with Senator Sinema and others today. And what I've expressed is we need money from the feds. When the state can come up with $20 million, and what the commander didn't tell you is, last year alone, our jail population just on border crimes was 40 to 44%. Population was border crimes. The federal government's got to step up. We get very little support in that aspect, and we need to enhance that. And the congressmen that were here today actually heard that loud and clear. So I'm going to push that up. Next week, both Senator Kelly and Senator and the others that attended will get a letter from me asking for that support again. We're going to continue these efforts. In the last 11 years, thanks to my team and myself, we've brought in over $100 million to Cochise County to offset cost. A lot of people don't talk about that. They're saying, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. We brought in $100 million. Last year alone in Cochise County, the cost of just border-related crimes to U.S. taxpayers was $4.3 million. Well, as you know, that's almost my budget. But the state of Arizona is helping us pay those costs for you on your behalf for the next 4 years. So we've done those efforts to reduce those costs. And I'm gonna give a shout out. I mean, Ms. Judd's been on the board a long time, and previous board members. We've done a very good job, both county staff, elected officers, led by the board, when it comes to keeping your tax rate down. And Jane, can you go back to that for a minute? Or look at the Rick, can you go back to the cost of this? You look at the unincorporated areas, 6.1. If you go back, and I encourage people, go back and look at your tax bill. And this is not to pick on any other quality of life issue, education, I'm a huge supporter of education. But it's not Cochise County that's causing you grief. I think the last time the board did anything with your taxes was like 1993. And Ms. English made a comment, the board chair the other day, that in a meeting in, I think it was Palomino or wherever it was at, that it's like 2 cents they've raised it since 1993. And Ms. Judd, you might want to comment on that if I'm wrong. But they have done their due diligence to keep it at a level that we've done our job. And over the last 11 years, I've not sat in front of you, I've not sat in front of the board, besides my market adjustments to keep my talent in place as my team members. We've asked for very little from you. I've gone on external sources to pull in that $100 million plus. But today I stand in front of you saying I need your help. I really need your help in doing this and asking you for about $65 a year to do this. And I doubt if you'll see me again come in front of you. I know the board's conscious of this. And the only time I'd argue, and I've done this before, and Ms. Judd knows this, and other board members, is we're not fighting for their competitive salaries. And if I was your police chief mayor, I'd be doing the same in front of you too. We've got to keep our talent. As you know, retention is a huge thing. But everything else, equipment, vehicles, personnel, overtime, we're taking care of that externally. But this, I can't get around this. I can't. So as you consider this and you're talking to your friends, please consider that quality of life. Please consider the nominal cost it's going to be, because the consequences of it not passing are going to be tough ones. And then people are going to step up. Well, how come? I wish you were sitting here. I really wish you were sitting here, because collectively we got to do this together. And with that, I'll turn it over for questions. Any questions?
If you raise your hand, I'll come to you with the microphone because it's being recorded. I'll start here.
Mayor?
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'm Mayor Joe Conrad from here in Benson. Sheriff, I just want to point out 2 things you brought up. Number 1 is the federal money. We've got to get behind that. Whatever you need, letters, you come see me. We'll take care of that. The other thing is that this is a shared cost, not only for the community, but for the people that come into the community and spend their money. So that spreads it out to where it's not just the residents of Cochise County that are responsible for this. And that's an important thing to drive home, that we've got a lot of tourism in this county that will help offset this cost. So that's a good point that really needs to get out there and loud and clear that it's a shared cost, and it doesn't land on the property taxpayer.
And to add, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the valid points. Thank you for the partnership with Cochise County, whether it be the board, sheriffs, whoever. Thank you so much. I think when it comes to property owners, it equates to about 41% of the land here in Cochise County. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, Rich. It's very minimal on that. So taxing that 40% is not fair when it's an all-user jail. So again, thank you for those comments.
Quickly, I'm Larry Saunders, and I've been estimator in Sierra Vista throughout Cochise County for 50 years. And first of all, thank you guys for all the effort you do to keep us safe every night. We really appreciate all the help. And the cost, if you don't build today, the cost is going to be, we're not going to like the cost in 2 years or 5 years. Every day concrete goes up, the aggregates, all the construction material will just increase daily. We all know that, but you got to go with it as quickly as we can. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for your support on that. And also, I was talking to Larry here. I know Larry a long time, but he was part of the initial construction of that facility 40 years ago. So you're in the same boat I am. We watched it develop. We're going to watch it close. And many people have asked us too, just to add another thought, is what happens once we build a new facility? What happens with the old one? We talked about regional evidence by the commander, where we have law enforcement regional evidence shared by all. We've talked about putting it in an animal shelter, which is my idea. In reality, it probably will be demolished. It'll probably be demolished. So I hate to say it like that, but
It's not worth it.
it's not. And the problem is the main is outweighs the keeping it in operation. So that's probably what's going to happen. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what you're gonna do with the old facility, but the other thing is, where exactly were you looking to put the new facility?
When we had the company come in, we actually, county owns the land, so if you've seen the old jail there on Judd Drive outside of Bisbee there, you come up, you got the jail, you got the administrative side of the sheriff's office, it'll be right to the west of it. We had the construction people look at it right there, we had some prelim designs done, so they'll flatten it out. It's all county owned, some of it's Felt Dodge, we talked to them, and Kenny, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we also talked to Freeport McMoran, and they're willing to cut us a deal on land around there. But the people that are sitting here can't guarantee you that's where it'll go. The sheriff said Bisbee's absolutely the county seat. The mayor of Bisbee loves having the jail there. It's in a good spot. It's not in a neighborhood. We like where it is. We won't have to transport people to court all the time. But that's actually up to the board of supervisors. Once we get these studies done and we have the money to get the studies done, and we find out, well, the best location is wherever because of transportation, because of the courts, because of the county seat, because of history, because of public opinion. We don't know what we don't know. None of us up here have ever built a jail or relocated a jail before. So we want those experts to come in so that we can do it right. And 15, 20 years down the road, there's not another group of people up here going, man, those people that designed and built that one last time really messed up. So we want to make sure that we do it right. We have all the studies done, but like the sheriff said, it's probably going to go in the county seat. We already have land. Our preliminary concept designs were designed for that, and we spent very minimal money on that. We just had a company that come in and say, what if we put it here? We don't know how much a new jail would cost, but we need a number to chase. So that's how we came up with anywhere from $92 to $100 million.
Jim, Judd, I feel like I'm in deja vu here. Because I came from a rural county in California, Plumas County, and the same issues that I'm hearing here, I was hearing there 2 years ago. But one of the things that I don't know and haven't heard, I hear a lot about the revenue that needs to be raised or is going to be raised. But where's the cost? How's the money going to be, the revenue going to be distributed not only for the cost of the jail, but for all the other aspects that are needed? Can we go online to find that? Because no one's saying that you don't need it. Believe me, you need it. I've seen this before. I support you folks. I wish the state and federal governments would as well. But anyway, if this thing's going to pass, we need to know what we're going to get for our buck. And again, are we going to build something wrong that we built 30, 40 years ago?
So in the publicity pamphlet that we mailed out prior to the ballots being mailed out, that we mailed April 17th, it's detailed out of what the estimates are, of what the breakdown is with our maintenance of effort, our $5.4 million is what we already paid for. And I kind of went over a little bit, about $4 million what we budgeted for is for the new jail. Additional $2 million to get 24/7 medical, and another additional $2 million to get the detention fully staffed. So those are rough numbers. I didn't mention this part, but 0.5 of that is going to be for contingency, for ongoing maintenance and care of the building, and hopefully build that contingency up. So come 25 years, there's a thought process of either building, expanding, and a building will be more capable of doing that.
Is that information on the website?
I apologize. I don't know for sure. I know it's in the publicity pamphlet. Oh, Jane, yeah, it is on the website.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I just want to say, well, I'll say it now. Thank you. So I just want to say that the public will have input all along. This isn't the last time you get a chance to sit in a room and ask questions or give your thoughts and ideas. And that's something that I've heard from all the gentlemen up there at different times. And I'm telling you, you will be able to talk about this jail again. But we do need you to vote for it. I don't think there's any way that we can go without it. And I hope the people in this room are feeling that in their hearts right now. We've been feeling it for about 6 years. I've been talking about it in the county. So it's getting to be the 11th hour. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Peggy. Anything else for y'all? If you do have questions, we're going to stick around here for a little bit, but if you leave the meeting, if you have questions, shoot me an email, shoot the county an email, talk to Ms. Judd, let us know. We might get those answers to you. We don't want you to come in and get confused or you don't have a question that's not answered. We'll do our darndest to find that answer for you. But like everybody said, thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate you. And hopefully on May 16th, we're all going, yes, excited. So thank you so much, everyone.